All right, and now I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on DevOps, Modern Skills for IT Professionals. I'm going to hand things off to our product manager, Buck Chell.
Thank you, Kelly, and I would also like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm Buck Chell, the ITSM product manager here at the New Horizons Computer Learning Center's corporate office, and I'd like to introduce today's speaker and subject matter expert, Jane Grohl. Jane is the co-founder and CEO of the DevOps Institute. Jane carries many IT credentials, including ITIL Expert, Certified Scrum Master, Certified Agile Service Manager, DevOps Foundation, and is a Certified Process Design Engineer. Jane's IT management career spans over 25 years of senior IT management roles across a wide range of industries, and she is very active in the DevOps, ITSM, and Agile communities, and is also the author of the Agile Service Management Guide. Jane is a frequent presenter at local, national, and virtual events, and we are delighted to have her join us today to present on DevOps, Modern Skills for IT Professionals. And Jane, without further ado, you have the floor.
Thanks, Buck. Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone, and greetings from London. I'm in London this week, so I know we have morning, afternoon, and late, almost early evening attendees. So thanks for spending some time with me today. As Buck said, I've been involved in the IT space probably a little longer than I really want to confess to, and so it's really gratifying to see the evolution of technology and certainly to look at the transformation that's happening right now with the rapid introduction of new technology on a regular basis. And as IT professionals, what we need to do to keep up with that. And thank you, Buck, for that introduction and sharing a little bit about my background. I do want to tell you a little bit about the DevOps Institute. We are partners with New Horizons at the corporate level and at the Learning Center level, and we pride ourselves on being the continuous learning community around emerging DevOps practices. For anyone that has done any research on DevOps, you know that its really rapid rise has occurred over about the last 6 or 7 years, crossing over into the enterprise space. And many of the practices and many of the skills that I'm going to speak about today really are emerging out of real organizations that are trying some innovative techniques in order to work their way towards the digital transformation. Our vision at DevOps Institute is really to facilitate a community where learning is a lifestyle, and our members have access to the most innovative, inspirational, transformational content, courses, and certifications. We don't do any direct deliveries. We work with partners like New Horizons, but we do create content. We do a lot of research on what's happening in the IT space, particularly in the development, operations, and security space. And our goal is to really be able to create certifications that are meaningful, that are relevant, and that help you be able to transform your skills for a modern age. So let's start there. So there's a lot of research being done. There's a lot of discussion socially, in presentations, conferences about the digital transformation. And the truth is that digital transformation is very real, right? The move from being able to do brick and mortar to online retail, I don't know when the last time anybody walked into a bank. Software drives the world. And if you look at innovations that have particularly risen over the last 5 to 10 years, I think you may see that there are some innovations that are particularly interesting. Tesla. You know, the cool thing about the Tesla is not the battery. The cool thing about the Tesla is it's a software-driven car. You know, you look at platforms like Uber or Airbnb or Facebook, you know, they don't actually own any of the real estate or the cars or the content, right? But they've created platforms for communities to connect with each other, or for you to be able to order an Uber or challenge the traditional taxi, hotel, and other space. So software is literally driving the world. And so regardless of your vertical market, your organization is now a digital technology company. And whether you're a manufacturer, whether you're a bank, whether you're services or a products organization, software is now driving your organization as well. And your biggest competitor is a disruptor. And you don't know who that disruptor is. I mean, again, go back to the hotel industry, certainly the taxi commissions and others who really never imagined that the competition would come from a software platform on your phone. So today's competition, the landscape that's starting to really realize, I mean, the introduction of artificial intelligence and really some major, very cool technology that's being brought forward by companies like yours, companies that I've worked with in the past, but it also does require us to shift the way that we think in IT, and also to shift the kind of skills that we have in our personal portfolios in order to adapt to the modern age. Attention spans are now, you can tell, I wrote this before, it's now 240 characters in Twitter, but attention spans are really now, if you don't catch them at that 240 characters, you may miss them. Migration to the cloud is accelerating. And I think one of the biggest influences on the digital transformation is the availability of information, right? Information is available at the speed of consumption. And so the expectation of the generations that are currently in the workplace, and by the way, there are 4 generations in the workplace right now. My generation is starting to retire out. Of course, the management layer comes from a lot of different generational levels, but all of them have access to an amazing amount of information. You know, the term big data, I'm sure you've heard that, is really driving the business's ability to shift depending on what the market trends are showing. In DevOps, we talk about Moore's Law. And so Moore's Law actually comes from quite a while ago, but essentially it says that the rate of improvement will increase exponentially over time. So if you've been in IT 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, you've probably seen the rapid exponential increase in the use of technology, both personally and professionally. You know, there was a period of time where information technology was a competitive advantage. And then there was a decade where technology was just expected, right? Everybody had word processing, everybody, you know, had distributed computing. And today, technology is absolutely a competitive advantage. And not necessarily the way that we would normally expect. And it's interesting because while IT is automating the world, we're also now struggling with automating ourselves. And that's part of the modern skills that IT professionals need to acquire in order to stay relevant talent in a very, very competitive, but also a very desirable place to be as far as the need for IT talent. I mean, so many organizations are hiring now, so many organizations have expectations of new skills. So if the digital transformation is real, how is that affecting IT systems? And if we start to look at how IT systems are built, we are really a system of systems. And so if you look at, you know, the landscape across the entire IT spectrum, starting with software development into release management and what we now call continuous delivery or deployment, and then post-production into operations, we have agile software development, we have continuous delivery, we have IT service management, excuse me. We have now something called site reliability engineering. And if you're not familiar with site reliability engineering, I would encourage you to research that a little bit more, because it is kind of the post-production combination of IT service management and engineering for operations, so automating more of the operational tasks. But if you look across this value stream, you can see that IT is made up of multiple systems. And one of our flaws in the way that we've evolved, and truthfully, we are a fairly young industry. You know, I'm married to an accountant. You know, back in the caveman days, they were moving around rocks and have evolved their skills and evolved their practices over a very long period of time. IT is maybe 60 years, maybe, and that's really pushing it back to very, very early computing time. So we're fairly young. And as we've started to evolve our practices, we've also evolved into silos. And so we have become not only a system of systems, we have also become a system of specialists. And so we have developer specialists who may have a lot of experience with Agile or Scrum or coding languages and creation of software, whether it's Agile or Waterfall. We have competencies in the delivery of software, whether it's QA or whether it's building, testing, deploying, change management, release management. And then we have competencies post-production in the form of operations, from infrastructure to support to incident management, problem management, configuration management, and so forth. So our system of systems has also created these silos that have created the silos of specialty. And that's something that needs to change very, very quickly. And that's changed both on the personal level and also on the organizational level, where the need to be an individual specialist, where it's sufficient to say, I am a developer, will no longer be sufficient as we start moving forward into this digital age. We need to achieve organizational agility. And so being agile just in software development is not enough. Being agile in service management is not enough. We really need the value stream. And if you're not focusing yet on your value stream, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. That's really where the focus has to be going forward, right? From where an idea is conceived to where it's deployed into production and actually delivering value to the customer is really the new focus within DevOps. So we talk about service life cycles, we talk about iterations and increments, but at the end of the day, it really is the value stream that is the most important. So if we're going to move away from being a system of specialists, then we also need to evolve ourselves into multidimensional professionals. So there's a trend in skilling right now where organizations are starting to build skills modernization programs. There is the term skilling is taking on a new context, where we're migrating ourselves from being I-shaped specialists. I am a developer, I am a QA person, I'm a systems administrator, I'm an infrastructure person, hence the I, right? I have a single specialty within IT to what we now call a T-shaped individual. So a T-shaped individual still maintains their core competence, right? You are still primarily a developer, but in addition to your development skills, you have to have broad general knowledge about a wealth of other areas around the IT spectrum. So test-driven development is very, very prominent in organizations that are starting to move faster because developers are able to test very early in the life cycle. Developing competencies around engineering and architecture, developing competencies around security are no longer just allocated to security professionals or QA professionals or even development professionals. Everyone in IT has to develop some level of coding skills in order to stay relevant, because the concept of engineering is now moving across the entire spectrum. So the message here is, if we're going to think like a system of systems, then we have to be able to look at the broad spectrum, and we have to have just enough knowledge about many, many aspects of IT and many, many aspects of technology in order to stay relevant. Now, much of what I'm about to tell you could make your mind explode with, do I really need to be an expert at everything Jane's about to share? And the answer is no. Right? But you do have to have enough working knowledge about many different competencies within IT to be able to collaborate with individuals who are specialists and to be able to do your future job like a test-driven developer. You're not going to become a QA person, but you do need to have core testing skills to be able to write test cases, to be able to perform unit tests, and also to be able to commit your code to a continuous integration server in order for it to move forward. So again, the day of just having a single focus, having sort of tunnel vision is going away, and the move in the digital space is to be able to first become T, and as this slide demonstrates, many are moving on to become pie-shaped or cone-shaped, where they have developed enough depth of knowledge in multiple competencies to be able to be considered specialists in more than one. So again, we're not moving in that direction right now. Your first evolution is to go between being an I-shaped specialist to someone with more T-shaped skills. So the recognition here is breadth of knowledge is as important as depth of knowledge. And so in addition to having knowledge about multiple technologies or multiple practices, the modern IT professional also has to have enough working knowledge of business strategies. What direction is your business going in, right? How do you get there? If you look on the right, the graphic comes from a Simon Sinek TED Talk on do you know your business's why, right? What is the purpose of your business, right? Why does it exist? And everyone in IT should be able to answer that question. Certainly you want to have working knowledge of multiple principles, practices, and processes, technology and automation, of course, and then cultural considerations. In DevOps, culture has been recognized as being perhaps the most critical success factor in a successful transformation. Recognizing the human aspect of it as much, if not more so, than the automated aspect of it is very, very important. So if you're going to become a modern IT professional, then your personal skills modernization really does require you to take a holistic approach. And a lot of it is certainly classroom and certification driven, and a lot of it is personal motivation, right? Personal exploration into what is your business why? What are your business strategies? How do you improve your ability to deliver value to the business? We're looking at more than just cross-functionality, we're looking at cross-collaboration. And the only way to truly cross-collaborate is to, again, have enough breadth of knowledge about other disciplines within IT and to be able to support higher level thinking so that the innovative, disruptive approaches can be born within your organization as opposed to being in awe of organizations outside of yours that perhaps have done that. So let's talk a little bit about what are the specific skills that the digital age is requiring, particularly looking at it from a DevOps and security perspective. And so I'll talk a little bit about DevSecOps, which is DevOps with a security focus as well. But looking very, very specifically is how do the development teams, the operational teams, and now the security teams build enough breadth of knowledge, and what do you need to learn in order to stay relevant, in order to become a T-shaped or a pie-shaped or a cone-shaped individual? The first step I would encourage you to do is to study your value stream. If your organization has not yet undergone a value stream mapping exercise where you actually do map out all of the activities that go from when an idea or a feature or a function or a new application is being developed all the way through and beyond production, right? From when the idea is first conceived to when it delivers value to your customers. And it's not necessarily looking at your automation pipeline only, although certainly automation plays a significant role. You want to be able to understand the human aspect of it. How is the organization designed? How are the teams built? Are the teams of specialists, or are they now what we call squads? How are they integrating the practices from Agile and IT service management, lean, continuous integration, continuous delivery, and any of your proprietary practices and processes? How is all of that coming together, or is that a separate silo that is really struggling to be able to find the connection between them. Again, a great example is agile software development and change management and IT service management. Sometimes there's a huge disconnect between the rapid development that's supported in agile and the more rigorous controls that are introduced in change management. So in your value stream, what are the activities that are driving that? And then, of course, looking at the automation aspect. And the reason you want to be able to do this, and by the way, as a skill, being able to value stream map is an incredibly hireable skill, right? So being able to understand not only what those activities are, but where is their waste? So are there activities that you can do faster, more efficiently? Maybe there's even some activities you don't need to do anymore. Very, very desirable skills in order to be able to value stream map. But more importantly, understanding that there are cultural activities, there are process activities, there are automation activities, and sometimes it's the human interaction that's actually the constraint within the value stream. So I'll give you an example. Testing. So one of the challenges with agile software development is we have seen that while software development teams have started to move into a faster, more incremental, iterative approach, and they're taking 2 to 4 week sprints, and they're producing some type of shippable product, and they've done that in 2 to 4 weeks, and 2 months later, based on all of the downstream activities of testing and security and building and all of the other downstream pre-production activities that occur, the delay has really taken what could have been a 2-week and turned it into 2 months. Part of that is because of the automation aspects of it. So some aspects of the continuous delivery pipeline may be automated and some may be human. And so do we understand that, and how do we skill around that, right? Again, I'm going to use that word skill a lot. How do we skill around that? So my first advice was don't underestimate your cultural skills. Right? Sometimes it's the humans that are driving the pipeline, the humans that are driving the value stream that are having the hardest time connecting with each other. And so if you have not been exposed to, say, Westrum, again, not a 500-page book to read. There's a lot of very concise information in certification courses from New Horizons. Lalu, same thing, very, very cultural pieces, really tell you how, in Westrum's case, the flow of information can change within your organization so that decisions are made much more quickly, they're done much more collaboratively, understanding what kind of organization you want to be able to be, grooming your leaders, and by the way, everybody is a leader, to be transformational, and not just how do we manage conflict, which is very important, or how do we improve communication, which is very important, but how do we value stream map? Or how do we create an organization that has cross-functional squads as opposed to agile teams? And does that make sense for us as well? So it's really understanding human interaction from the flow of information, human interaction in terms of transformational leadership, organizational design considerations. How can we design our organization so that there's more human interaction? And this is not the soft stuff, right? This is not standing around the campfire stuff. This is very, very important learnings around how humans interact, particularly in a creative environment like IT. You might have heard of servant leadership. Right? So Scrum very much advocates servant leadership, which is incredibly important, where the leader serves the team. And that is part of transformational leadership. But transformational leadership also takes an inspirational approach, right? So learning how to inspire your team, whether you're the leader of the team or a member of the team, is a very, very important and frankly, hireable skill. I mean, everything I'm going to talk about here is also about growing your career. Don't reinvent the wheel. Right? If you're going to look at practices and processes, again, do you need to be an expert in all of these different disciplines? No. Do you need to have enough working knowledge of each of these different disciplines in order to be able to grow the extent of your general knowledge? Yes. So if you have not yet read The Phoenix Project, it is a novel, so it's not only an enjoyable read, but you recognize most of the characters. It is not the single body of knowledge around DevOps, but it does, I would call it a fable around some of the aspects of IT in a current situation and how DevOps can be applied. That was then extrapolated into more of a prescriptive approach in the DevOps Handbook. Jez Humble's continuous delivery book, certainly important as well. And then have a working knowledge of Scrum, Agile, a working knowledge of key processes within ITIL or IT service management, excuse me, particularly change management, release management, looking at incident and problem management particularly. And then again, some real basic working knowledge of some lean concepts like value stream mapping, right? Being able to understand what an improvement kata is, being able to understand what a lean coffee looks like. Again, very, very high level, but very desirable in today's IT skill marketplace. So again, do you need to have extensive knowledge about this? No. What's likely going to happen is as you're growing your portfolio, you likely will have more expertise in one, but good general knowledge in the other. And of course, there's a wealth of courses and educational opportunities around each of these that's available to you, including and not limited to DevOps Foundation, which gives you obviously an extensive overview of all of this. My other advice is, while you're certainly not going to need to become an expert in every one of these tools, and this is just a small sampling of the tools that are out there, everybody needs to become some aspect of an automation engineer. I mentioned before the new concept of site reliability engineering, right? We talk about test engineering. We talk about continuous delivery architecture and engineering a continuous delivery pipeline. And in today's modern environment, where in the past we might have had more of a homogenous automation approach, so you would get all of your automation from a single supplier, usually some of the larger names in the industry. In today's environment, many of the pipelines are built either on open source or enterprise versions of some very well-known interoperable aspects of your pipeline. So for example, CloudBees, which is the enterprise Jenkins company, Jenkins is probably, if not the, one of the most well-recognized continuous integration, continuous delivery platform. Right now, I think Jenkins has like 2,000 different plugins. Do you need to understand all 2,000 plugins? No. But should you have enough knowledge about the different capabilities within the pipeline from an automation perspective? Puppet and Chef certainly on the configuration side. We start to look at Splunk for data, GitHub for source repository, Slack for communication. We use Slack, the DevOps Institute, for communication within our team, Docker for containers, right? And I can go on and on and on. So again, do you have to have extensive skill in every one of these tools? Depends on your role, right? And that's really the message behind the message. Depends on your role. Should you have a working knowledge of what each of these tools are? Again, this is just a small sampling, but these all fall into categories of tools across the pipeline. And so should you stay on top of that? Absolutely. It's kind of like medical professionals that stay on top of new techniques and new tools that are available to them. As IT professionals, you should at least understand what the top tools are, what they do, and how they can support the system that is IT today. So here's where I really want to just spend a little time, because we're going to get more specific. Now, again, there's lots of educational opportunities for you that I'll speak to in just a bit in terms of certification and training. But this is a little bit of a checklist of, and again, depending on your role, will really depend on the depth of knowledge you need on each of these topic areas. But this kind of sums up. And you may have some other ideas in terms of within your own organization, but everybody, whether you're an infrastructure engineer, whether you're on the help desk, whether you're a developer, should have a very good understanding of the cycle of agile software development, right? There's lots of ways to become a Scrum Master. I'm a Scrum Master and I'm not a developer. So really being able to understand the Scrum approach, to understand the roles, the events, the artifacts that are produced in an agile software development environment. I actually extrapolated that into the Agile Service Management Guide, taking the same approach to software development, to process design, right? Where we start to look at minimum viable process, whereas in Agile software development, we look at minimum viable product. So regardless of your role, you should have a good working understanding of what Scrum and Agile software development is. I mentioned before about value stream mapping. Everyone in IT should at least understand what a value stream map is. Again, lots of educational opportunities, some good books around value stream mapping, but until the entire organization can recognize what does your value stream look like? And by the way, it's not usually just a single map, right? You could value stream map your change management process and identify not only what does the whole process look like. This is not a flow chart. If you look at the image on this slide, you can see that much of the value stream mapping is done with sticky notes, where literally you take a big wall, or if you're virtual, you do it in a virtual environment, and you put sticky notes that just define all of the different activities that happen across that value stream, right? So if you look at change management as a great example of that, you can actually see where the change is requested, all of the activities occur until the change actually delivers value to the customer. And so value stream mapping on a very high level and on a lower level can deliver a lot of no pun, value to your organization, because you can then collaborate on where's the waste. You might identify redundant activities. You might identify activities that you thought were no longer being done, but have continued to be executed, regardless of some change in process a long time ago. And most importantly, you can understand what it takes to deliver value to your customers. And you can do that on multiple levels. Everyone should have exposure to value stream mapping. Same thing with testing. Testing is no longer just for QA anymore. QA individuals would be the trunk of the T, right? So they would have the specialty expertise around testing, but everyone in IT now needs to be a tester. Whether you're a developer, whether you're a security professional, whether you're an infrastructure individual, whether you're on the post-production side, testing is pervasive. And so when we start to look at test engineering, there are tests that are being written across the pipeline from when the product is first line of code is written for test-driven development, and then passed through to whatever automation or manual processes you have in continuous delivery or in your release management process, all the way through to post-production. And so one of the great insights that came out of DevOps is that automated or continuous testing is a requirement. And that means everybody has to have some test engineering capabilities. That also means your compliance is going to be greater, because test engineering means that we're going to be writing so many tests all along the way that by the time that product goes into pre-deployment or post-deployment even, then the quality controls that have been built into it all along the way ensure that the risk of that product causing some kind of disruption or not delivering value is much greater. Same thing with security. While the security professionals will maintain the trunk of the T, the reality is everybody has to have some insight into security, from development all the way through to infrastructure and beyond. In today's very cyber risk security environment, we know that post-production being able to understand threats, to be able to understand and protect the environment has always been a requirement. But if we're going to shift left, that's a very big DevOps concept, we're going to shift left and do more testing earlier in the development cycle and the software delivery cycle, then everybody needs to also be aware of security all along the way. I mentioned before DevSecOps. DevSecOps is a rising competence, very desirable. So if you're a security professional, very hireable, where the integration of security in a shift left mentality, and I hope you know what I mean by that. Shift left means we do things earlier, right? We move it earlier in the life cycle as opposed to being a downstream activity. So it becomes very pervasive. Well, if it's going to become pervasive, then the skills that are associated with security, whether it's broad-based skills or whether it's a very deep skill for the security specialist, becomes important to everyone. Containerization, Kubernetes, Docker. I mean, there's so much around the value of containers and the value of being able to build and operate on a container platform. You go to most of these technical conferences right now, and between Docker and Kubernetes, among others, everything is moving into into a container environment. Same thing with microservices, right? Breaking down these big legacy applications so that we can build them into microservices that can be released independently, that don't have the same type of codependencies as past applications, that really lowers the risk, but also allows us to update and change more frequently. So that migration into microservices has become important as well. And then continuous delivery. I've mentioned it a few times. Everybody should have some core competencies in continuous delivery. Continuous delivery, to me, is one of the most fascinating aspects of DevOps. It is not the entire spectrum of DevOps, and I need to make sure that's well understood. But continuous delivery, Jez Humble is the author of the Continuous Delivery book. And Jez's approach is that releases should be boring. Now, I will tell you truthfully, I've been in IT a long time. I would tell you a lot of our releases weren't too boring, right? They were very dramatic. They were usually done on a Sunday night where we would take systems down, or we would do it Sunday night with a lot of redundancy. And so they had to be planned, and 2 weeks in advance, we had to put a request for change in, and there was a lot of rigor and control around changes. And in a continuous delivery environment, particularly one that has a fair amount of automation built into it, based on say a Jenkins platform, and then what other interoperable tools would be added via APIs. The core message behind continuous delivery is that releases should be boring. They should be boring. They should be able to be done in the middle of the day. Now, this doesn't necessarily apply to every one of your applications, but having a competency in continuous delivery, understanding what it is, what value it brings to the organization, and then how you can, regardless of who you are and what role you're in, can apply those same concepts to the products or services that you either develop, deliver, or support is critical, right? Because until we get to a point where many, many, many releases are boring, we can't really use people for what people do best. And that's another Jez, I call it a Jezism, and that's that let the computers do all the boring work and let people solve problems and do higher level thinking. And that's really what continuous delivery is all about, right? Build the automation, build the test, shift everything left, get a lot of evidence out of it. And again, where there is a business critical application that can't be broken down into microservices, a legacy application, maybe that doesn't apply. But until you have skills around continuous delivery, you're not going to be able to know which ones you can and which ones you can't. Data analytics, I mentioned before, information is at the speed of consumption. And so every IT individual, regardless of what your role is, has to be able to analyze data, has to be able to not only pull reports, I remember the old days of the green bar. Not only be able to pull reports or be able to look at completion logs if you're in operation, but really looking at what is the data telling us, right? What is the data telling us in terms of business performance, throughput? What is the data telling us in terms of IT performance? And beyond that. Key ITSM processes. There was a lot in the early days of DevOps about the disconnect between IT service management and DevOps, and whether DevOps was going to be the death knell for IT service management. And I would tell you now, that question has been asked and answered, and the answer is no. ITSM is very alive. Everyone in IT has to have core IT service management exposure, particularly to key processes like change management, release management, incident and problem management, service level management. So I would encourage everyone to be able to become ITIL Foundation certified, to explore IT service management from an agile perspective. DOI is introducing some drill down courses, ITSM for DevOps, value stream mapping, non-certification, content for our partners, but become familiar with these processes. You can't improve a process, you can't make a process more agile unless everyone in IT has that skill. And when you start to look at your skills portfolio, particularly depending on where you are in your career, whether you're settled in your organization and looking to help your organization evolve, whether you're looking to grow your career and perhaps from a desirable talent perspective, right? So you're putting yourself and your talents on the market. All of these skills make you not only multidimensional, but put you at a much more desirable talent stage, right? And then the last one is site reliability engineering. DevOps Institute's actually going to introduce a certification late in 2018 around this. If you have not yet heard about site reliability engineering, SRE, then I would absolutely encourage you to do some research. It is the future of operations. It is the future of support. It is the future, in my mind, of IT service management. We have been working with some pretty prominent folks on understanding SRE. SRE, interestingly enough, has not grown up as part of the DevOps movement. It's growing up on its own, but the connections between them are tremendous. If you're in the Bay Area, there's a great conference around site reliability engineering in March called SRECon. Google wrote a book called Site Reliability Engineering that detailed their approach to keeping their environment stable and reliable, and that sort of launched this SRE movement towards migrating operations to much more of an engineering approach. Number one skill, when I was at SRECon last year, I asked a bunch of hiring managers about SRE. Number one skill is the ability to code in Python. So teach yourself Python, or go to a Python training class, develop some type of Python skills if you're on the operational side, but this is very much on the rise. At the SRECon last year, truthfully, there were about 15 booths, mostly, Silicon Valley-based companies, some corporate enterprises, most of which were manned by their HR department. So that gives you an indication that SRE is on the rise as well. So right about now, you're probably going, I don't even know where to start. Like, what do I do here? What do I learn? What do I need to do in order to be able to take my own skills portfolio forward? Well, there's lots of things that you can do. Certainly become a continuous learner. If anything, it is no longer okay to learn a particular coding set of practices or a particular set of processes or anything along those lines. DevOps is growing up very differently than other frameworks. There aren't 5 books or a single guide that can tell you everything you need to know about DevOps and where you should start your own skills transformation. It is a collective body of knowledge. And so publications, conferences, training classes, certainly thought leadership are key inputs into growing your skills portfolio. Of course, through our partnership with New Horizons, we've collected a lot of that into our courses, and I will explain that in just a minute. But it is your job now as a modern IT professional to identify what skills do you need. Remember, you don't have to be an expert at everything. You have to have working knowledge of many things, right? So go from being an I to a T. What do you need to do is going to be based, very closely on your role and where you are in your own personal career and where you are in your organization's evolution. I think that's important as well. At DOI, we spend an enormous amount of time researching the influences, the emerging practices, and really trying to collect them into something that makes sense. The good thing about DevOps is there's a lot of information out there. The bad thing about DevOps is there's a lot of information out there. And so become a continuous learner. Now, I do want to spend a little time just talking about competencies and certification. And forgive me, this is not a sales presentation. Hopefully you've had a chance to come away with some ideas in terms of how to grow your own skills. But there are certifications, and certifications demonstrate competencies. And so at DevOps Institute, we've worked very closely with the market. We've worked very closely looking at emerging practices with our partners like New Horizons to really understand what are these competencies. We do not believe in experts, masters, even the mythical, DevOps engineer, really trying to break it down into what are the hireable skills that organizations need to either groom or acquire. So hopefully, if you get nothing out of this, everyone needs a broad exposure to the practices, to the integration, to the cultural aspects, and certainly DevOps Foundation addresses that. In many cases, your only exposure to cultural considerations may come in a class like DevOps Foundation because you're a technologist. So it is a very, very broad-based, and again, certification, but we also use it as a prerequisite to the other certifications as well. And if you look at the certifications, these are not meant for specialists. These are meant for T-shaped individuals. So if you're a developer, you should also consider becoming a DevOps test engineer, because that makes you a test-driven developer. You should also look at DevSecOps engineering, because you're going to need to build security into your code, and understanding security and its relationship across DevOps is important. Everyone's a leader. And so I would tell you very frankly, my favorite is DevOps Leader, because it is about strategic thinking, about innovative thinking in a disruptive digital environment. It's not a traditional leadership course. It's a transformational leadership course. So everyone should develop some competencies in that. If you are a technologist, then Continuous Delivery Architect, the course is actually Continuous Delivery Architecture. So whether you're the actual automation architect or not, understanding how pipelines and how continuous delivery is built, including some aspects of the shift left mentality, is important there. And then, as I mentioned before, we'll be introducing a site reliability engineering certification later this year. And then finally, no prerequisite required. If you're at all involved in IT service management, particularly if you're adapting your processes to a much faster iterative approach, then I would encourage you to look at Agile Service Manager and Agile Process Owner, because they do take ITSM. They're not specific to individual processes, but it is more of an Agile approach to designing an engineering process. So on that note, I hope I have not blown everybody's mind to think, oh my God, I don't even know where to start. And I'm hoping we have some really good questions. And I do hope after this that each of you attending will join DevOps Institute's free continuous learning community and start your journey as a continuous learner. So Buck, Kelly, do we have any questions?
Thank you so much, Jane. I'm going to give everyone a minute or so to answer to ask any questions that you may have. And while I do that, I wanted to also direct everyone to our website at newhorizons.com. You can find all of our DevOps courses and certification offerings by clicking on our Center for Leadership and Development, and then going directly to the IT service management portion, and there you will find an updated list. If you are not familiar with New Horizons or your local center, you can log on to newhorizons.com and do a zip code search to find the center nearest you and reach out to them regarding any of your training and certification needs. Also wanted to remind everyone that I will be sending out a link to today's session recording for anything you may have missed. So feel free to go back and review that. The link will be live for the next year, so feel free to review that. And it will also be on our website, newhorizons.com. Just click on webinars, and you can find webinar archives that include over 50 of our past webinar recordings that are all free for you to view. Let's see if we have any questions now, Jane. Here we go. How does a developer change directions into a position where DevOps skills will be used and developed?
That's a really great question. So, you know, the message behind the message in DevOps is it's all about software delivery. And so everyone is part of the software delivery pipeline right now. So for a developer who, and again, not knowing whether the person asking the question works in more of an agile or a waterfall approach, obviously the first step is to move from a waterfall approach to an agile approach. And assuming that that is the case, then I would suggest that that developer starts to acquire testing skills, certainly, so that testing can occur earlier, more frequently, more pervasively, and hopefully with more automation, depending on the maturity of the organization's transformation. But building those testing skills is critical, right? Understanding really at a very high level what happens after the sprint, I think is very important as well. So we produce this shippable, potentially shippable product, and then it gets handed off downstream. Well, in a continuous delivery environment, understanding not only what continuous delivery is, but what it could do, again, depending on the maturity of the organization, I think is a key aspect of the modern developer. So I would suggest that modern developer at the very least needs to have testing skills, certainly a broad-based overview of all of the aspects of DevOps. Everybody needs that because, again, I don't think you can solve problems as easily or efficiently unless everybody has the same mindset. But moving on from there, testing and understanding continuous delivery, I would think would be the two critical aspects or the two critical levels of knowledge that a developer would need. And then again, more and more, but I would start there, particularly with testing.
All right, great. Well, it looks like that is actually all we have for questions today, but wanted to thank everyone so much for joining us today. Jane, thank you so much for joining and presenting on behalf of the DevOps Institute.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks everyone. Just a reminder, I'll send you all that recording later today. Thanks again, everyone. You may now log off. Have a great day.
Bye.